Hey everybody, about a minute early. I see Brian actually did make it. He told me he was going to be a little bit late today. So congratulations, man. Hope you're playing with your bike. So who else is on tonight? So, alright, well guys, we're going to do something a little bit different, yet kind of the same. Hey Jonathan. So tonight we're going to be doing a little bit of bug identification, super general, just to kind of let you guys know, and I don't know if you guys, probably some of you might know this, I actually got a degree in stream entomology. So streams, bugs of the stream, something that I studied in college, but I just kind of wanted to be able to go over a little bit of this because we were talking about, you know, mayflies and caddisflies and stoneflies, and I wasn't sure if everybody actually knew what they all looked like. So, starting out, and I'll just kind of talk about it. The bug that we see on this right here, that's a mayfly. And we'll go over how to identify each one, and I'm going to go over super general. I'm not talking, you know, talking about counting toes, which, yes, that is a way to identify them. I'm not talking about looking at mouth parts. None of that. I'm literally going to talk about, you're on the stream, you see it float by you see it fly by you. How am I going to tell that I got mayflies hatching, or I got caddis hatching, or I flip over a rock and, oh, that's a stonefly underneath there. That's, you know, or that's a caddis, or something like that. So, first thing I'm going to talk about is mayfly adults. So, really easy way to identify them is they've got tall wings. When they fly pretty well. You know, 6 legs, yes, they're a bug. And they have multiple tails. They're very delicate looking. They've generally got pretty big eyes. They're super cool. They're actually, I mean, you know, when you look at fly fishermen, mayflies are like the big thing that everybody loves, and everybody wants to be able to fish. So, yep, 3 tails. That's actually on, not always. So, I will talk about tails and understand bugs are like the English language. There's always exceptions. Yeah, welcome to the world. So, I will say the one on the right, we talk about a blue wing olive. So, pretty easy to identify them. That wing is kind of bluish-gray, olive body. That's a definitive blue wing olive. That's about as blue wing olive as they get. But I wanted to be able to have something, and I'll say this, guys, I've never seen one that blue-winged olive in the state of Virginia. Stuart, how do they taste? I'll say this, they kind of taste a little buggy. And yes, I have tasted them. If you get onto a stream that has an epic bug hatch and you're trying to eat lunch, I won't lie, I've had it happen. Had a gray caddis hatch on one of our streams around us, and I think I might have eaten more caddis than I ate sandwich that day. And, you know, it sounds disgusting, but, you know, they were covering everything. It was an epic hatch. So, also going to talk about the nymphs. Now, we talked about 3 tails. That is one of their typical identifiers. They've also got a flattened body. And one thing you also look, if you can get a good up-close look, is you can see the gills down along, you know, that's called their thorax. So their thorax is kind of their stomach area, what we would call our stomach. Then their abdomen is higher up, that's kind of our chest area, and then they've got the head. Awesome bugs. Actually, if I remember right, the one on the left is actually supposed to be a blue wing olive. According to a little bit of research, because I was pulling some images off the internet. Not gonna lie, I did not take any of these photos. So I didn't go into any of my old photos. But if you look, they're usually pretty mottled, brown. So when we're thinking about tying flies to imitate them, got to think about, you know, what do they look like? So next thing we'll talk about is caddis. So caddis are pretty cool. I will say caddis are found in just about every stream. Big reason is because, and I didn't talk about this with mayflies, mayflies need fairly clean water. Caddisflies less so. They can take a little bit dirtier water. So if you're in an area with a lot of caddis and not a lot of anything else, chances are that water's got a bit of pollution issue. It's not a huge issue because, let's be honest here, the cleanest water in the state of Virginia only ranks as like a B on the scale. You know, we don't have the cleanest water ever, sadly. But caddis, their wings, when they stop, form a tent over their back. So kind of it's a cool thing, and they look like a moth. I mean, it's really the easiest way to identify them. When they fly around, you swear that it's a moth flying by you. So the one on the left is actually what's called an October caddis. That, you've heard Brian and I talk about the October caddis hatch. That's what an October caddis looks like. They're pretty cool. They fly really close to the water, which is what makes them so cool, to lay their eggs. So literally fish jump out of the water to eat them. The one on the right is called it's a gray caddis, but can't remember what the other name for caddis is. Anybody remember? There is another name, and all of a sudden I'm blanking on it. But you'll hear it called that regularly. I'm going to have to look that up in a second. You know what? That's what the internet's... Well, no. It's not what the internet's for right now. I'll have to look that up. All of a sudden I'm blanking. I just know him as a caddis. So, kind of went over the identifying features of them. When we think about tying our elk wing caddis, that's why you kind of want that elk wing or deer wing, same fly, to lay down low across the back, because then it looks more like the wing structure of a caddis. So the caddis nymph, they look like little worms. It's the easiest way. They either are going to be like a net spinner, which is the one on the left, or something they're going to kind of create their own home. So the one on the right, yes, that is gold and pearls and all that. Kind of cool. Kind of cool. That actually is jewelry that is made out of those. Kind of a little bit different. So the one on the left, that is a net spinning caddis, very common in the state of Virginia. So when Brian talked about doing the lightning bug, remember how many weeks ago now? When Brian did the lightning bug back, I think it was early September. When he tied that. Remember how he said green seems to be his most popular color, seems to be deadly for him. What color is that net spinning caddis? If you look, most caddis have got a slight curve to them because they're kind of worm-like. They're pretty cool. Like I said, they typically are going to be found in every body of water, at least every body of moving water. Now, we can talk about still water, and you get different kind of bugs in there versus moving water, which we're kind of working on moving water right now since it is trout season. So now we're going to come up on, I'm not going to lie, guys, my favorite. These guys are stoneflies. I have a love affair with stoneflies for a couple of reasons. One of the big ones is you're going to find them in the cleanest water possible. I'm not going to say coldest water because that's not a requirement for them. But clean water. So, wings lay flat down across the back. If you look on the one on the right, that's going to be kind of your definitive, the way the wings lay down. They're not great flyers. And honestly, the bigger they are, I always tell people, the more they fly like a drunk helicopter pilot. Easiest way to see them coming down the river. You get some of the big ones. We've got several species in the state of Virginia. They are my background. They're really what I studied. So, but the two that we've got are two of our smaller varieties. So, the one on your on the left, that is called a winter stonefly, winter black stone. They hatch all winter in our streams. They will hatch literally in the middle of a snowstorm. The coldest weather they can come out in, they will come out in it. So, one thing I probably should bring up with stoneflies. When they hatch, they crawl out of the water, whereas most caddis and most mayflies will swim up to the surface. Stoneflies will actually crawl out of the water onto a rock, kind of the way that a dragonfly will, if you see, the dragonflies do that. Very similar. So the stonefly, they'll actually crawl out of the water onto snow, even. Molt, turn into this adult that you see here, and go do their thing. They're usually alive for about a day, and then they come back to the water, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of times stonefly adults are not a big dry fly to fish, because there isn't a big dry fly time for them. The one on the right is actually called a yellow Sally. Another smaller one. Both of these are going to be typically somewhere, well, to be honest, the little black stone is going to be like an 18 to a 14 typically. and yellow sallies are typically a 16 to a 12. Stimulators are good imitations of these. So are actually an oak wing caddis, or deer hair caddis, something like that. So they're, that's kind of what they are. The yellow sallies are going to come off typically in our area April. Once we kind of start warming up April, early May time. And then I don't have a picture of it, but there is another species that we have here in the state of Virginia. You'll have people in fly shops argue with you all day long. Okay, that's fine. We have salmon flies in the state of Virginia. So the salmon flies, you'll hear, you read in the magazines about salmon fly hatches out west. We have the exact same salmon flies here in the state of Virginia. For the most part. We have a few different varieties, but main one being literally the one that they talk about out in Colorado and Montana and all the cool places until you get over to the other side of the Cascades or get out and around the Cascades where they have a whole different variety. But we have salmon flies. They actually are found as far south and as far east as Richmond, Virginia. I have found them in the James River. I found the nymphs in the James River. They're huge. Salmon flies are typically going to be 2 inches long, whereas these other ones we're talking, half inch, maybe 3/4 for a huge one. 2-inch long bug is a big bug flying around. And then you get to the ones out on the Deschutes River, so they've got the western salmon fly. They'll be 3.5 inches. They're massive. I've had the joy of being out there for the hatch on that, and it's crazy to watch a 6-inch rainbow trout crushing a 3-inch bug on the surface of the water. Yeah, they'll do that. So next one we'll talk about is their nymphs. What I've got actually on the left is that little the snowstone, so little brown or black stone. Easiest way to identify them, you look on the one on the right, they've got 2 tails. They'll have 2 antennae also generally, and then they got wing pads along the back. So if you look on the one on the left, you can kind of see where it almost looks like little mini wings. They're also, stoneflies are typically going to be rounder than like a mayfly. That's an easy way to identify them. The other thing is they're typically predators. So it's kind of one thing that makes them cool is that if you look at them closely, you realize where the eyes are set. They're meant to be a predator. And you get into a big one, you get into like a golden stone, which we've got in the state of Virginia, or a sandfly. They're generally going to be the bad boy of all the aquatic insects outside of a hellgrammite or a crayfish. They will eat pretty much anything, and they have zero fear. They are super cool, and you don't find them a lot. I always tell people, like, if you find a stream with stoneflies in it, you've got a pristine stream, and definitely spend some time in there because it's got some cool factors in that stream. With this, I kind of wanted to do just a basic to see, if you guys were interested in this sort of a thing. I can definitely go into more detail on anything you want. For the most part, there are a few things I don't know. I didn't put in here midges, only because, 1, I hate tying midges. 2, I hate fishing midges. 3, midges are tiny. I always tell people, like, easiest way to identify a midge is if I can't identify it, if I can't figure out what it is, I call it a midge. Yeah, we have trico, which are a mayfly. That's a, little tiny thing, but generally it's a midge. Cool thing with midges is, you might not find it cool, but I do. They're related to houseflies. They're in the same family. They're a close relative of a housefly, but they are tiny. Typically, midges in our area are going to be somewhere between basically a 24 to an 18. They're small. I don't like tying the flies for them. Smaller than I really like to tie. I can't see the fly on the water. I won't lie. I can't see them. Midwinter, though, they're usually about the only thing that you can consistently get to hatch. South River has a great midge hatch. The other thing is that midge nymphs are probably one of the easiest flies to tie. I probably should have done that tonight, honestly, instead of just a real basic nymph. But, a zebra midge is one of the simplest out there. Okay, yeah, no. So, Stuart, really, for time of year, it's, really dependent on what's hatching. And that's the reason why I kind of wanted to be able to do the basic, you see it fly by you, there's a mayfly, okay, there's nothing wrong with trying to catch one or two. Hold on to it and look at the color. That is why that a lot of times Brian and I will teach these patterns that can be tied in multiple colors. Is because that's what we want you to do, is to have 2 or 3 colors, of this pattern, so that you can be able to kind of just have a couple and be ready. Mayflies, they're typically going to be a spring, summer, fall thing that depends on, where you are. And, if you're going somewhere, Stuart, you know how to reach out to me. And basically everybody here, you can email Brian, he'll get you my information. I can generally tell you what's going to be coming off, kind of. I always tell people, I might not be exactly right, because hatches, with the climate being the way it is, and I can say this, guys, I've watched them, hatches have gotten funky. Used to be consistent that I knew when Yellow Sallies would start. They've moved, and they've moved forward a bit, but not always. So that's one thing, if you pay attention, you spend time on these streams, you'll notice these things. So the best thing to do, Stuart, when you're out there is, one, I always tell people, if you're on a trout stream and you're not catching anything, flip over rocks. Look at hopefully you'll find stuff crawling around on the bottom of the rocks. Look at what's crawling around, because if there's something crawling around, that's what the fish are eating. And we as fly fishermen, we concentrate on dry flies. We love fishing dry flies. I don't blame anybody. Watching the fish come up and hit something on the surface, it's awesome. But I'll give you a hint. 90% of a trout's food is subsurface. Just about all of what they eat is nymphs. So, yep, Stuart, match the hatch. That's actually where it really comes from. You got some general stuff out there, like the Adams will look like a lot of flies. Ironically, I have heard stories that the Adams was intended to be a caddis, but we all fish it as a mayfly. That's one of those fisherman's lore that I've heard a couple of times that I've never been able to substantiate. That fly's so old we'll never be able to find out, because the person who invented it, I guarantee is long since left this earth. But, with this, if you guys want me to go into and do a week on mayflies, a week on caddis, a week on, I would say probably not on stoneflies. They're not common. Stoneflies are not a super common thing to find. I wish that they were. Like I've said, I love stoneflies. They're just super cool. They're predators. They're big. They like I said, they fly like a drunk helicopter pilot. They're ungainly. They're just cool in that sense. To sit there and realize that something that underwater is so mean, and then when it's flying through the air, so, when it's flying through the air, you'd never know that it was mean underwater. So Brian's asking, where in a stream you should be fishing a mayfly versus a caddis. Honestly, most of our streams, they're mixed in together. So typically, mayflies are going to be more towards the head of the pool. The nymphs are going to be more towards the head of the pool. They're going to be in that more oxygenated water. Caddisflies, they'll be up there. They'll be kind of towards the back also. But one thing to think about with these nymphs is, nymphs, while they crawl around underwater, and literally they just crawl around underneath the rocks most of the time. At night, they'll come up on top of the rocks. What happens with them is they get knocked off. Nymphs are, by nature, horrible swimmers. Most nymphs. There are a few mayflies that are really good swimmers, and they are. That's the reason why you don't have a big nymph for some of these. For some mayflies, because honestly, you don't find a lot of the nymphs out there. But like a blue-wing olive, ironically, there's not many nymphs for a blue-wing olive. There's what's called an emerger, so that's kind of the middle state when they're swimming up to the surface to hatch. But there's not really a nymph for them. But you'll find them when they get knocked off. They can't swim back to the bottom most of the time. So they're going to literally just be taking a ride, kind of if you've ever been to a water park and fallen off your tube and you're trying to get back on or something. It's pretty much the ride they're getting. They're rolling over, they're going, oh God, oh God, oh God, because they know what's about to happen to them. They know if they don't get back down to the bottom and get back to cover, they very well might end up being food for a fish. So, and you go up onto some of our streams. One thing I always tell people, I don't really love to spot burn, but North Fork of the Mormons, if you ever want to get a chance to look at insects, it's probably one of the most diverse streams that we have. The other one is actually the Rapidan. It's pretty diverse on its bugs. So just a chance to flip over rocks. And one thing you can do this time of year, when we talk about brook trout and they're spawning, and the spawn probably just ended. Honestly, I did see one of my friends was out catching some today. I didn't comment. I knew better. It's actually my old boss from way back in the day. But, one thing you can do is you can flip over rocks and look to see what's in the stream. If you see a bunch of little nymphs, and you can look at them and go, okay, they're a 1/4 inch long, they're 3/8 of an inch long, something like that, and they're brown. You know what? Maybe I should tie up and have ready some nymphs that are just sort of look like this. There's nothing wrong with taking a picture. I do it a lot. It helped me when I first moved back to Charlottesville to understand what I was looking at. Couldn't tell you exactly what the species was every time, but I always knew that, they were size 16 brown, dark brown, and I knew that would work. One thing is that in these streams, especially in our brook trout streams, the fish don't have long to think. They have something floating by them. It's sort of like somebody using a air gun to shoot hamburgers at you. You don't have long enough to figure out, does that one have pickles or not? You grab it. And if you don't have hands, how do you grab it? You grab it with your mouth. So, and then you find out that it has pickles and you spit it out because you don't like pickles. Easiest way to really describe what a trout's world looks like. But one thing I also wanted to do was I wanted to be able to tie up a super basic nymph tonight. Something so that, you can change the color on it, change the tail on it, change the size on it. Ow, I just put a hook in me. Yeah, that's a sharp hook. Something so that, when we're out there, when you get a chance to go onto some of these streams, having a couple of these, and I'll also tell you, they work for bluegill. Yeah, well, Brian, leave those pickles out of this world. Whoever invented those, I don't think they should have been born. I hate pickles. So, but yeah, just wanted to sit there and have that. I'm going to tie up a real basic nymph tonight. I'm actually still got a fly from last week on my last time I was tying on my vise. Give me a second. I'm going to switch screens. So hopefully this works. Guys, I'm trying something new with actual full-on screen swapping. I'm going to wait a minute because I want to watch the YouTube feed and make sure that it actually swapped. So you'll learn that we have a delay in what I say and what you guys see. So, but yeah, I mean, like I said, if you guys want more info on, on some of these bugs, and, I can even go into a bit into each stream. I'm more than happy to. If you've got a particular stream you need to know, what's in there. I've been on most of them in Virginia, or at least you're in the Charlottesville area of Virginia. There's some down southwestern corner. I want to go fish. Yeah, Brian, actually, it's been more than that. Or did it not transfer over? Oh, yeah, it didn't transfer over. Hold on. Turn that one on. Turn that one off. Hey, what do you know? Learning how to use this OBS Studio to do this. So, yep, in that case, I know that it switched over. So now I'm going to take this fly off, and you guys should remember that's a little pheasant tail. So when you think about it, small brown nymph. Now I'm going to put on the same hook. I'm using a size 10 tonight. The heavyweight hook. I'm using a size 10 just because it's bigger in the vise for you guys to be able to see what you're doing or see what I'm doing. I don't have the big, nice, fancy camera lens like Brian does. Unfortunately, I have not bought one like that yet, and probably won't, honestly. So, put our hook in here. Honestly, if you've got something between a size 14, size 16 to, down to an 8, you'll be fine. Like I said, just kind of think about what kind of bugs are on most streams. Honestly, if I was going to pick one hook size for tying up a nymph to be looking more like everything on the stream, I would go with a 14. 14 is kind of a good general size. I like 16s also. I talked about when I tied the CK nymph about tying them in 8s. Still don't know why that works. We don't have that many big bugs in the streams, but for whatever reason, you give a big meal and they're gonna want it. So start out, we're gonna put some wire on there. I've got some good old, it's straight up lead wire, 020. Use whatever you've got. I always like to weight my nymphs a little bit. So I'm gonna put on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wraps, and then we're gonna try to break this off elegantly. Which might be the hardest thing to do tonight, is trying to be elegant. So we're going to want to put that about an eye length to 2 eye lengths back from the eye of the hook. I like to do that just so that I get that weight a little bit more centered, but it's also still there to be the thorax. So think about the thorax as the chest. That's, just a little bit of anatomy. It's kind of the chest of the fly. And most nymphs are barrel chested. They've got a big chest on them. They got very little waist. I kind of wish I could be a nymph. They definitely don't have a beer gut. I can tell you that. Most nymphs do not have a beer gut. So then we're going to put on our thread. If I can get my spool to cooperate with me, that's why it's not cooperating. A little bit of technical difficulties, guys. Here we go. That's good. So we're going to start out, and if you've ever seen me start wrapping with lead wire, I like to start in front, hold the tag end over top of the lead, do a big loose loop over top the whole thing. So you can actually see underneath of the lead that little bit of thread. It's kind of facing towards the camera. I like to do that because what that'll do is that'll help hold that lead in position. Trim, break off your tag end. I know people actually can break it off. I am not one of them. I wish I could say that I use, it's because of the fact of I use really good thread, but I can tell you I don't. And then I'm just going to want to kind of wrap over and create ramps. And we're going to wrap back to the bend of the hook. And guys, I'm literally doing a super basic, super simple fly tonight. Because honestly, it's kind of what I wanted to be able to do. I wanted to be able to show you guys something that you could vary the color, vary the size, be ready for just about every stream in the state of Virginia. Now, for a tail, grab hackle fibers. If you've been tying up atoms or tying up something where you've got some grizzly hackle, use that. I literally put my hand into my box of materials today, and I came out with English grouse. So they're kind of cool. Kind of variegated. So if you think back to what a mayfly looks like, yeah, that's kind of what they look like. But it wasn't for any reason other than I put my hand in my box and pulled it out. So what I'm going to pull off is, remember how we talked about, some flies have 2 tails. Okay, well, that's not fun to tie with. Mayflies have 3 tails. Well, I'll give you a hint. trout don't have fingers to count. So if you use a bit more than 3, they're probably not going to bother it. If you got fish that can count, they're really smart and they're not fun to catch. Actually, they are fun to catch, but good luck fooling them. The fish on Mossy Creek, I can tell you, they went to JMU, got their PhD, they've got their postdoc. Those fish can count. Those fish are intelligent. That's one of the cool things about Mossy Creek. So, you know, if you can fool fish on Mossy, you can fool fish pretty much anywhere in the country. So what I just pulled off was maybe a half dozen fibers. I don't know if somebody wants to count that. Maybe 10, somewhere around there. I tried to get them as even as I could. One cool thing is the tails on most nymphs are very delicate. And by the way, if you're doing a caddis, you don't need a tail. Caddis don't have tails. But most tails are very delicate. They break off regularly. So the chances of ever finding a nymph with the tails all being exactly the same length, not that common. That's one that's, you know, ready for a photo. But what we're going to want to do, if you remember, the tails, they're pretty long too. So we're going to do about a hook length for a tail. I happen to get that just about right on the first try. That's called dumb luck. If you get it a little bit wrong, don't worry about it. If you're a little bit short, not a big deal. If you're a little bit long, again, not a big deal. You know, these fish are most of the time in our smaller, you know, high gradient streams, they don't have time to really look that closely. So we're going to tie this in. I'm going to do a loose wrap and then a tight wrap. And I'm going to make sure I tie this all the way down. And I'm actually going to tie it all the way up to the front and then bend it back. English grouse is not known as the most sturdy material ever. There is a tailing material that has become very popular lately. I would say lately, but in the last 10 years. It's a material called coq de leon. It is variegated sort of the way that these are. So it's kind of modeled like this. It is apparently almost indestructible. And it is natural. It is quite literally from a specific rooster from, I think, well, coq de leon, I would assume France. And they are, it's a material that everybody says is great. I've never bought into it. I've never bought any because I've never seen it anywhere. So now I'm going to go ahead and pull out my dubbing. I'm going to try to show dubbing tonight. I'm literally using just a Spectra Blend dubbing assortment for nymphs. Doesn't really matter where you get your dubbing from. Dubbing is dubbing. Well, not really, but I like the Spectra Blend stuff. It's a little bit easier to work with personally compared to like the old school, you know, back in the day natural materials. Those can be an absolute bear to work with. I think what I want to do, and literally guys, you can use whatever color dubbing you want. If you want to do black, you want to do white, you want to do whatever, it does not matter. I'm actually going to go for a dark gray. Don't ask why, other than I've got a whole pile of it in my dubbing. So I'm going to try something. Hopefully you guys can see this. I had a feeling that was going to... Well, hey, that actually kept its focus pretty well. So, zoomed way out. Oh, hold on. Gotta change that now. So, just sit there and have you guys, and I'm going to show you guys how I put dubbing on. So Brian talked about using a little bit of spit on the thread. You can use dubbing wax. They do make it. It's awesome stuff. I just didn't pull mine out because I'm going to show you guys how I was taught way back 20-some years ago. So, what I do is I literally just lick to my fingers. Yeah, I know, it's disgusting. Yeah, welcome, Brian, welcome to my world. If you saw how many post-its are on this screen. So what I'm doing is I'm putting on a little bit of dubbing. And now, of course, with this camera, it's not going to have it all in focus. But I'm going to put on about 2 inches worth of dubbing. And I'm putting it on fairly thickly, if you notice. I'm trying to make a fairly round bug. I'm going to actually zoom back in. One of the perks of using the lens that I use, Brian. So I'm just giving Brian a little bit of a hard time. He likes to use fixed focal lenses. I like to use zooms. So, and now I'm going to put this on. And remember, we had that really thick upper body. You know, that was formed by that lead. So what we've got here is a very basic little nymph. You know, if you look at it, you've got your tail. I'm actually going to use scissors for that. You got a tail, so it's a little mayfly tail. Body length that's pretty short. I mean, remember, a mayfly's tail is pretty much as long as the body. Then I've got a head, and if you remember, the head on a mayfly and on a stonefly are pretty big. They got a big dome on them because they got really big eyes. Most of them have big eyes so they can see predators. You know, if your life is spent being the bug and trying to not be eaten by everything, you'd have big eyes too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to form a head. Since I'm using black thread, I can just sit there and wrap and wrap and wrap. I got like 8/0 thread, so I'm going to be wrapping for like next 10 years. And now, what we can do, we're going to finish this fly. I'm actually going to try something. Haven't done it in a while. If you whip finish, by all means, absolutely whip finish. If you have challenges whip finishing, which a lot of us do, whip finishing is a learned skill. It's a tough one. It's one of those things that it is tough until you get it. And then the day that it clicks with you, it's the day it'll never leave you. It's like riding a bike. So I'm going to zoom back out a little bit, and I'm going to show you. I'm actually using my hackle pliers for this. That is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a half hitch. Wrap around. I don't want to be around the backside. I want to be around this little bit of a piece going down. That is not working out as well as I planned on it, but hey, whatever. Come on. You want to do several of these. Slide off. Yeah, guys, this is not working out the way I intended. Don't pull out the scissors. I do use my scissors from time to time to do this. Pretty much what you just want is something pointy. And what you want to do is you want to get that loop that you form. I'll do it a couple more times, because one thing when you're doing half hitches, you got to do a bunch of them. So if you see, there's a loop formed here. I want to get that loop, that didn't go over top the eye of the hook, to go over top the eye of the hook. And a lot of times I'll do 2 loops, do a double half hitch. There we go. So after doing this, you really should use your head cement. Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails, definitely the preferred one. Oop, looks like one of my loops came loose. So now what do I got to do? I got to trim up a little bit. And my scissors are dull. These must be my old razor scissors. Now, you look, one other thing I didn't really talk much about. I want to kind of rough this up a little bit. Rough up this dubbing a little bit. If you got some Velcro, by all means, Velcro. So roughing it up makes it what we call buggy. What does roughing it up look like? I don't know. People will say it looks like legs. To me, it's probably more gills. Honestly, it's something moving in the water. So you see that? You've got a little kind of olivey. That was supposed to be a dark gray. But that's pretty olivey to me, what it looks like on the camera. So something like that, super basic. Guys, if you want to be able to go out, fish for some trout this winter. You know, we've got, since our bass fishing is pretty much done, I don't know about you guys, but we got down to freezing in Richmond last week. My garden's dead, sadly. Bass fishing is pretty much is going to be done. I know some of the guys are still pulling it off. I don't know how. But yeah, definitely, I mean, it's, you know, something simple. You guys can fill up your box with these. Like I said, tie them up in a 14 and a 12. You can go out there, you know, maybe a little bit of split shot up ahead, a piece or two of split shot to help get this fly down a bit more, or a bead head. If you want to put on a bead head, the way that we did for the pheasant tail. And I'm going to see if this fly will drop out. Nope, it's not going to do what I want it to. That's how I, when I'm tying quickly, what I do is I literally just open up the vise enough for it to fall out. So, something like a bead head pheasant tail. You can put a bead head on that fly that I showed you. There's nothing wrong with putting a bead on there. Yeah. So, just something simple tonight. Guys, honestly, I wanted to be able to do a quick little primer on the bugs. So, if you see one flying by, you can, you know, you can figure out what it is. If you don't know, and you can catch it, take a picture of it, send it to Brian. Brian will then hopefully send it to me if he doesn't know what it is, and we'll give you an easy identification. I literally might tell you it's a brown mayfly, because it's actually usually a brown drake. Drakes are mayflies. That is actually one thing I did remember. I just can't ever remember what the British name for a caddis is. One of those things drives me nuts, because whenever I hear it, I know exactly what it is, but I never can remember it. But want to do that. Wanted to say thanks for everyone for coming by tonight, and hope everybody has a good week. I don't know what Brian is going to do next time, because he hasn't told me. In fact, actually, we haven't talked about it. I will say I've been super busy with my job. I know he has been. That might be why we were a little late on getting some things out. We're sorry about that. We're going to make sure that doesn't... Well, we're going to try to keep that from happening again, but I don't know. I know my work's gotten busy, and that's a good thing. So, I want to say, everyone have a good week, and I'll see you all later.